Well, hello and welcome everybody. My name is Christiana Carmine and I'm a board member for the Alliance of Women Directors. And we are so thrilled to be hosting a conversation with Mary Lou Belli, who is nominated for an Emmy this year for outstanding directing for a comedy series for the Ms. Pat Show on BET+. The Ms. Pat Show was created by Jordan E. Cooper and Patricia Ms. Pat Williams. And if the show follows Miss Pat, who likes to tell it like it is, as she figures out how to survive suburban Indiana with her husband's kids and sister. In Mary Lou's episode, Baby Daddy Groundhog Day, Pat and her husband Terry are thrown a curveball when Ashley and Brandon's father pay a surprise visit. So Mary Lou has been directing television for over 30 years in many genres, from sitcoms to procedurals to documentaries. And through her teaching, she supports many of the vibrant diversity programs, including the DGA, ABC Disney, CBS, Sony, AFI's Directing Workshop for Women, and Warner Brothers Directing Workshop Mentoring, and the next generation of directors. She's the co-author of 4 books: the new Sitcom Career Book, Acting for Young Actors, Perform, Acting for the Screen, and Directors Tell the Story, my personal favorite, which she co-wrote with fellow DGA member Bethany Rooney. So it is my pleasure to welcome Mary Lou Belli to our chat. Hi, Mary Lou. Congratulations on your Emmy nomination. Mary Lou is joining us, by the way, from the road. She's in Nolens, and she was kind enough to make the time for us and have this chat. So we're so grateful. Thank you, Mary Lou.
Oh, I'm so grateful you have me.
And selfishly, Mary Lou, I bow down to you and your incredible career. So, and speaking of your career, before we dive into the show and the episode, I'd love to talk a little bit about this career of yours. Your credit list is just out of this world, from directing NCIS New Orleans, Black Lightning, Bull, Legacies, Station 19, Sweet Magnolias, Pitch, Monk, Famous in Love, Devious Maids. The list just goes on and on. We'd be here like all for the whole hour. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started and when you first realized you wanted to be a director?
Yeah, I came up and was trained as an actor. I went to a conservatory program at a university, Penn State, and I finished my degree in 3 years, into New York, and probably within 2 or 3 years of performing, I think it was after I finished my 100th performance of a show, I went, oh, I don't like this performing so much. By that time, I had left New York and I was in LA. And luckily, my husband knew someone on a TV show, and I was basically a stand-in for a teenage girl on a show. But I went, oh, TV. Oh, yeah, I like this a lot. I liked the pace of it. I liked the fastness of it. I liked that they were doing a new episode every week, which was what I didn't like about theater, because it was just the same show every night, which is great for a lot of people, but it wasn't for me. And most important, I realized very soon after that what I liked most about being in the performing arts was rehearsing. I didn't like the performing part. So I went, well, is there a job where, I get to figure out the puzzle, the rehearsal part, and then go on to the next puzzle? And actually, there was an actor, a wonderful, wonderful actor, big voiceover artist. He was, I think he was Stu on the Rugrats, named Jack Riley, who pulled me aside and he said, you should be directing. And I argued with him and went, oh, no, I took one directing class in college. I was terrible. And part of that was being young, because I think, as we all know, as directors, part of the job is having a point of view. And that comes from, partly living in the world. But by that point, I'd gone through some pretty big things. My roommate in New York's mom had died while we were roommates. And some other big life events. I got married. I moved from New York to LA. So by the time that person, Jack Riley, had said this to me, I went, oh, yeah, I might be ready. So I went back to my first love, which was theater, and joined a theater company in LA, Theater West, which kind of became my home. And I not only directed there, but I produced almost 75 short plays there.
Wow.
And as a result, I honed my managerial skills, which is such an important part of directing in terms of, even if you're not a producer director, which I've now done that job as well, um, managing time, managing expectations, managing the fact that you need to come in on time and on budget. It's the business part of being a director, which I think you really have to toe the line on. On the first show I worked on in Los Angeles, besides Jack Riley saying you should be a director, there were some people I was watching who I thought were really good directors. Will McKenzie, Jim Drake. On the next show I worked on, Alan Rafkin, the late Alan Rafkin, and I learned by watching. And I realized that I'd spent all this time learning acting, and my graduation from being kind of a stand-in on a show was being the acting coach. That they trusted me with the acting, but what were they going to do next? And I knew by that point I wanted to direct. I had gone back to the theater. I started directing and producing there, but they trusted me with half the job. And then, as Michael Lembeck said to me, okay, you know half the job, now you're going to learn cameras. And on the first sitcom I worked on a regular basis and was coaching on, Phil Ramuno, who I co-wrote the Sitcom Career Book with, he started letting me hang out when he was doing shots. I was observing, but it was basically my autodidactic film school. I knew by that time I wanted to direct. I was getting some really nice reviews for the plays I was directing. And I basically let it be known, this is what I want to do. And there were some really wonderful producers who said, give her a shot. And some directors who said, on sitcoms, it was very common for one director to do a whole season. And they say, I'm only going to do 18 of these 22. She should get a chance. And it's because of those generous people and those people saying she's really good. And my co-author, Bethany Rooney, who did the same, and some actors who requested me. But because of that, I was able to get a shot. And I got a shot when there weren't a lot of shots. So I am very, very beholding to those people who put their necks on the line for me. And it's why I feel like I want to give back and do the same. And all those organizations that you mentioned when you kindly introduced me, they're active programs who have a proven record already of launching careers. And AWD being another one of those I want to say strategic organization that knows what's necessary in terms of the people who are making the decisions to show them that our membership is worthy of this chance. And when we get the chance, we shine and deserve that next show and the next show after the next show and all those things. So that's basically my history. The sitcoms the balance of sitcoms and dramas is another whole thing, but we can talk about that later.
For sure. I do have a side question. Jack Riley, did you say it was?
Yeah.
What could you pinpoint, or do you have like a recollection of what exactly you think it was that made him say you should be directing?
Yeah, I was coaching. I was basically there as a stand-in, but I was also coaching the kids when they came out of school, because the kids basically a 4-character and maybe a couple other scenes with the ancillary characters, one of which Jack was. So they saw that I was rehearsing with the adults, and then when I wasn't, I was always watching, and I would give little notes. One of the lead actresses, in fact, I'll get a little sad. She died 6 years ago today.
Oh.
Judith Marie Bergen was on the first show I ever worked on. And then for years, she was one of the leading ladies at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And I remained her coach from that moment on.
Wow.
For a lot of her career until she was, out of LA and just doing theater. But in terms of them seeing that I was giving great notes to the kids, and a couple of people would go up and, like Jack being one of them, and Judith Marie would say, and it was something that's as simple as, I'm holding this prop. Would you just take a look and tell me where they're, what the shot is, so I know whether to hold the prop here or here, or if this is out of the shot, if I hold it way down here. So like simple things that I was observing. And I guess they heard me talking to the kids and giving, I was an actor. I was giving, and I'm still an actor's director.
Yeah.
I speak action verbs. I speak in intentions. It's so easy to play for those of you who, are direct that the same way, or for those of you who are hyphenates out,
And acting and directing.
Mm.
So you're a wonderful and beautiful example of somebody who was really just doing what you loved to do at that particular time, and not thinking, I'm going to do this so that I can, end up being a director. You were in it. You were in your space as a stand-in and as a coach, and focused on that. And then that just opened up this beautiful world. So that's really amazing.
But I got my first agent because they saw me sitting in a control room. There were control rooms in sitcoms. And he saw me, that I had shortlisted the whole show, because he was actually there for his client, Phil Ramuno. And he said, what are you doing? He ended up being my agent for 19 years through 3 different agencies. He said, when you get your first shot, get in touch.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. And I didn't know who he was. He was just,
Oh, very beautiful.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes a good episodic television director?
Again, I talked about someone who's responsible to the budget,
Mhm.
but someone who is first and foremost a storyteller, someone who knows and can prioritize. I can read a script and know, especially with the time constraints, I'm going to do some simple coverage on this one because it's not the meaty scene of the episode. But even if my AD is giving me the evil eye, no, not that they do, no, but that look of, and I'll go, it's okay, because this is the meat. I know I'll make up the time because I've very specifically identified what the crux of this story is and which scenes get to the heart of that. So, and I think that skill came from, and it's still one of my great passions. I've been a lifelong reader. I mean, I was that kid who went to the library every Saturday and came home with a stack of books this high. And then 2 weeks later, I would say, Mom, I'm done. I want to go back to the library. It was also my world. I mean, I didn't grow up I grew up 14 miles outside of New York City. So, but books were also my entry into the world I didn't know. I was the first person, even though my dad was born in Europe and came over as a kid, I was the first person in my family to, get my passport and travel, and to many continents by this point, and made sure when I was raising my children, we would house trade every other year. So my kids got to go to other continents and see other parts of the world. And, my daughter is just turned 30. My son's in his mid-20s, and they travel. They want to go places, and their life view has been informed by that. But reading was my entry into what I didn't know. And I have to say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I never have been. I'm in total admiration to the people who I know are the smartest people in the room. And there's so many who are, and I go, oh, okay. But I've always been, I've always wanted to learn, and I've never faked what I didn't know. So, the natural curiosity I have about the world made me want to read, but also reading, and I've mostly read fiction, not nonfiction, helped me understand story. So when Bethany and I went to, this has been my process on all my books when I wrote, when I've written, is we find the shape of the book in terms of the table of contents, and then we divide the chapters that one of us is going to write the initial pass, and then we trade and trade and trade until it's, revised enough that we think it's done. But when Bethany and I went to do Directors Tell the Story, one of the ones I definitely wanted to do was the one about story, because I just love, I've loved the structure of story since I, read Oedipus. It's like,
Was
oh,
that during when you went to the library? Was that one of the books that you took out?
I, I don't know if I was reading that when I was 12 years old, but, I just love stories of all kinds, and I love all genres. And I get up in the middle of the night. It's also my way of combating my insomnia, is that I get up in the middle of the night and I read. And I have two, before I read on a tablet. I'm going to tell this little story. So Tony Shalhoub and his wife, Brooke Adams, were some hiking partners of mine in Los Angeles. And one day I was complaining, and Tony knows my husband. And I said, my husband, Charlie, he's going to divorce me. He said, I have used every device, every book light. He wakes up, he hates me in the middle of the night. And I think we were in our pajamas one night, and there was a tap at the front door, and it was Tony. He said, I just went by Rite Aid here. And he handed me, I have them with me, they're glasses that have little flashlights right here. I've replaced the batteries on them at least 10 times. And I call them my marriage saver. And thank you, Tony Shalhoub.
So they're glasses and they have these little flashlights that you could wear.
Yeah. If you go to a place in like Rite Aid that has the magnifiers, I think that's where he bought them. But I didn't even know anything like this existed. And what it does is it concentrates the light exactly where you need it. So if I'm reading a book, of course, now I read mostly on a tablet at night.
Right.
And I keep the setting to the lowest brightness.
Right. You're not waking. So what are you reading right now?
I just got the second installation of a book written by a man who I first knew as a playwright, Andrew Foster. He has a wonderful book that you can get on Amazon called Snowfall. I think it's 2 words. And he sent me a preview of the next.
Wow.
Because it's a part of a trilogy, and he sent it out to a very limited number of people for some notes, because he wants them back by a certain date so he can. So
excellent. All right. And you said Foster was his first name?
Andrew Foster.
Andrew
Foster. It would make an amazing movie or TV series.
Hint, hint, everybody out there that's listening. Now on to the fabulous Miss Pacho. As I mentioned, the show was created by Jordan E. Cooper and Patricia Ms. Bat Williams. And among the producers are Lee Daniels and Brian Grazier. How did you become involved in this series, and what was it like working with those creators?
BET had hired me for a number of other shows earlier, so I wasn't new to the BET family. And I had interviewed with Imagine TV, which is also, obviously, when you mentioned Brian, Natalie Burkus of Imagine TV. I had interviewed for another show, I think a children's space show or something that she had done. And we got on very, very well. We just liked each other. She knew my credits. And my agents and manager had said to me, especially my manager, Matt Horowitz, had said about a year before, you ready to go back to sitcoms? Is it something you'd like to do as well? And you have to understand, it was a very strategic move on my part in terms of my career, that I had a feeling I wasn't ever going to be taken seriously as an episodic director unless I just stopped the comedy altogether. And I did. I just stopped. It was like cold turkey. I said, I want to focus on this. I don't think I worked for 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
I got the monk because of Tony Shalhoub, actually Tony Shalhoub's wife, saying, you got to let Mary Lou direct one of these episodes. Thank you, Brooke Adams. I love you so much. But Tony also knowing me very well. And the same thing with Scott Bakula. Thank you, Chelsea Field, his wife. But Scott and Chelsea have known me for years as well. But being asked, people who knew my theater work, who knew me as an actor's director. But in terms of the Miss Pat show, I read it. And I said, this is like nothing I've ever read before. Guys, if you haven't seen this show, to see it is to know it, but I cannot describe. It is as groundbreaking, and this is not my words, but when Norman Lear sent Jordan E. Cooper a video message saying, and I don't want to misquote Norman, but basically the content was, this is remarkable, this is groundbreaking, and this is from the man who created All in the Family, that it was like, to me, like, I know what the person who read All in the Family as a possible director must have felt like, because I went,
And the Jeffersons.
Well, many, so many. He's such
And he just
amazing.
turned 100.
I know, is that amazing? And speaking of books, that which we were before, I also read Ms. Pat's memoir called Rabbit, Rabbit. It will tear your heart out.
Oh, wow.
It will tear your heart out. And then I had to go back the next morning that I finished it and direct. Oh God, can I do this? So I knew I loved the story. I knew I loved how different it was. I was honored that they were going to let me, and most important, I had seen the pilot that Debbie Allen had directed, and she had done a spectacular job of introducing these characters, and most important, of casting an amazing ensemble of really good actors to support Pat, who hadn't acted before. But also I had been in that position. I had coached a lot of comedians on their first shows or on, their first entry into sitcoms. So I knew what it was like to take someone who wasn't an actor, but I could also identify someone who had natural acting ability. And once you finish first season of Miss Pat, second season just premiered. And if you had any doubt from the first season that Miss Pat is a brilliant actor, wait till you see what she does in the second season.
Oh, wow.
She's sort of owning it. And the envelope is pushed even more in the second season. The entree, my agents got me the meeting. Miss Pat and I got along really well. And I fell in love with Jordan. Jordan is the youngest person to do what he does.
Wow.
He is a brilliant, kind, young man. And if you think I have a lot of energy, he makes me look like a sloucher. And, I've been, from all those sitcoms I did, I've been with people who can just, throw at those jokes. And he's a fantastic storyteller. And if you're in New York, starting in November, he has a show on Broadway that he is starring in, that Lee Daniels is producing. So Jordan E. Cooper on Broadway. I think it's going to be November through, or late November through March.
Do you know the name of the show?
I don't. Someone look it up, put it in the chat if there's a chat.
So do you feel that your approach to directing changes based on the genre, or are you approaching it?
It's a different job. They're very, I fell into sitcoms. I didn't think I was a particularly funny person, but the acting part of it, I got immediately. And the comedy rhythms part, I got immediately because I was a musician first. So I had done musical comedy as a singer, actor, dancer, and I literally, it's like music to me. So if you miss a joke, it's like singing flat. To me, I'm going, ugh. Episodic is a different skill set. And I love both. I had done one a lot and knew I wanted to try the other. And I totally, someone just, Lucky Bailey just said it, the rhythm is everywhere. You're right, Lucky. But I also realized that everything I knew about comedy informed the acting rhythms I hear in episodic as well. Now, what the directing episodic did for me was it opened up a visual tone that, because of some of the limits that sitcoms have in terms of being 4 cameras, it's basically a proscenium. It has um, way less opportunities in terms of, a 360 palette for
Right.
directing, and a lot less toys. On Miss Pat, I'm allowed 1 extra piece of equipment a week, so I choose between a Steadicam or a jib. And I did a lot of jib first season. I went much more for a Steadicam the second season. And then when I wanted something really high, I used a ladder. um, uh, but also then doing episodic for 10 years before I went back to sitcoms informed, especially this episode that's nominated for the Emmy. There's an action sequence in it that is an homage to Denzel Washington's original movie, The Equalizer, the one that Queen Latifah's series is based on. There's literally, it's an homage to a scene that especially this audience knows inside out and backwards. So they go, oh, we know what she's doing. So there's a little action in it. I bring the cameras into the set for certain angles, which Debbie had sort of established as much as she could during the pilot, and I tried to continue. But this particular episode I love so much because it really shows off every character's point of view, because they interact with the baby daddy individually, and they basically have their own storyline with that baby daddy. And then on top of that, there was a little, the way to tell the story in terms of starting the Groundhog Day part of it over and over and over. I wanted to find something visual that would work, and I did.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it lent itself to, I think I directed 4 episodes the first season, and for 3 of them are very, very normal sitcom genre pieces. This one's special.
Yeah, you did direct 4 because I checked it out. Do you, as a little tiny sidebar, in terms of, do you envision sort of what, as you're reading the script, how you were going to approach that scene, as you said, that was an homage to The Equalizer, Denzel's film. Is that something that sort of just comes, or are you sitting there and you're trying to think about it, or is it just something that comes to you as you are reading the script?
It didn't, because I hadn't watched the Denzel's Equalizer, and I knew I had to. So sometimes it's like, oh, I should go watch Denzel's Equalizer and that particular scene. But on NCIS New Orleans, we had episode after episode that was an homage to lots of different movies. So I was used to doing that. I always do a first read, and anyone who knows directors tell the story. Bethany and I are very, very passionate about the idea of reading a script from top to bottom without interruption the first time, without taking a note, to see, because it's your first time viewing it. It's your first time where you are the first audience for that.
Right.
And that impression will never be the same. And if you do it in real time, you get the impression of the arc of the show in terms of how the story builds and unfolds to the denouement. So in terms of that, I always do that. And I take my notes on my second pass. And then my third pass is usually, if I'm really squeezed on time, especially in episodic, my second pass is sometimes my director's diagram. But hopefully I get to read it a second time, and then I break it down into what all the individual stories are. But I get ideas. And here's my thing about, I don't panic, because if it's a good idea, it'll come back. And if it's a not so good idea, you'll find something better.
I'm going to remember that, so I'm not obsessing about the idea that I forgot about.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you lose something on your computer once, that you think, oh, I'm gonna die. And then you go back and you have to literally sometimes recreate it. It's always better the second time. That might be my Pollyanna reaction, but otherwise, what are you gonna do? Slit your throat?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to take the Pollyanna route.
Okay.
You kind of answered this question, and I can just see it in your face and hear it in your voice how special you felt that this episode was. Because the next question that we were going to ask was, did you have a sense of how special Baby Daddy Groundhog Day was? And it's just from
I
what
did.
you said, yeah.
I did. And, I've been a member of the Academy for years and years. I had never submitted myself. This was the first time I did it.
No shit. Pardon me.
Yeah, I had submitted myself for Directors Guild stuff, because but I went, I think this one's special. And my husband watched the entire season and he went, yeah, which is interesting because it's not written by Pat or Jordan, although Pat and Jordan's really did rewrite everything. But it was, oh yeah, and I forgot about that. The person who wrote this episode, I had done 4 years on another sitcom called Eve, starring, the hip hop artist, talk show host, star of Barbershop. So he had written this episode. So I felt very lucky that I got it. And sometimes you get that episode that you go, it's okay. And then you get other ones you go, oh, I know exactly how to do this. I had another BET show called Kingdom Business that's in its first season, where I was telling a story through something that was an homage to Nat King Cole and Natalie Cole's Unforgettable music video.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that writers of this and the creators of the show didn't tell me ahead of time. They said the network didn't have faith in this when they saw it on the page. And when I read it and I said to the creators of the show, I know exactly what to do with this.
Wow.
And they loved what I did with it. And sometimes it's the right pairing. I knew exactly how I wanted to do this homage.
Yeah. And the result was beautiful. And resulted in this awesome Emmy nomination. So we have a question from one of our members, Julie Herlocker.
Hi, Julie. Get that movie made. Yes. We have a project that we hope.
Yes, Julie. Julie asks, in this episode, with each doorbell ring, every character gets a chance to face Lloyd in a way they can control that gives them a sense of resolution. So there's a lot of honest portrayals that need to happen. You did a great job in making every line feel authentic. Did you do anything differently with preparing the cast for this episode? And how did you engage each actor as individuals and as an ensemble to make that happen?
Well, I'm going to talk to the individual part first. And thank you for noticing that, Julie. Because most of them were one-on-one, it was Lloyd and that character. It was very easy to differentiate the specificity of what that person's point of view toward Lloyd. Lloyd is the baby daddy, guys. Mm-hmm. And he was also in real life, that character is based on Miss Pat's sexual predator, who before she was, I think, 16 years old, she had 2 babies by him. Wow. I mean, an awful story, but she's found the humor in it. But in terms of the ensemble part that Julie also, when Junebug, the youngest boy, tells his story, this is a wildly creative cast. And he, in his version of dealing with the baby daddy, he's sort of like a singer rock star, and everybody else became his backup singers. Well, we knew we might do some of that, but I let this cast go. And I literally came back from, having rehearsed 2 other scenes, and those kids had figured out they wanted costumes, they wanted sunglasses, they wanted bling. So my part, especially with this cast, now that I've now done 3 seasons with them, is to sometimes put the germ in their heads, or if they have an idea, sometimes mold it. And sometimes I just say, run with it, come and show me. And this is a unbelievably talented cast. And that's one of the reasons I wanted this particular episode to be seen, because it showcases what's very special about all of them. Like Ashley, the oldest daughter, who probably was the oldest enough to realize the abuse,
Mhm.
and who plays a psychologist character. Her part has a lot of weight to it in terms of the way she deals with the baby daddy, Lloyd. So, Julie, thank you for that question. But I take some credit for it, but I also, we all know as directors, you create a safe space where creativity is rewarded and honored, and you get the best work out of people from, in front of the camera and in back.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you just said segues into the next question is, you're talking about your amazing cast, your incredible cast, and they are extraordinarily talented. And they have this chemistry that is just truly outrageous. And that's just my personal observation. Is just the chemistry that the cast has that jumps off of the screen. But this individual asks, what is the rehearsal process like, and how much improvising is done on set, or does everyone have to stick to the script? Lou, you kind of touched on that a little bit in the last.
Yeah, most of it's on the page. Jordan is there sometimes for rehearsals, but always there for the shows, and he's always rewriting and refining. He's very open to people having ideas. I will tell you, Vince Swan, who plays the oldest son, who is a director himself and writes as well. I'll literally say to Jordan, and then to Vince, I'll say, I told Jordan you were a little light in this. If you have ideas, please come and pitch them. And he does. And I would say 80% of them get in the show.
Wow.
And then there's, things like when you're writing for someone like Tammy Roman, who is a comedy genius, you just let her fly, and you don't call cut right away, because you will get gold, in those moments. And with, Jay Bernard's, who plays the father, his acting chops are, he is the gravitas of that show. And that was one thing I noticed when I watched the pilot. I went, he's special. He is special. And what he brings out in Pat, because this show breaks rules. It does things we've never seen, but most of all, it almost always ends with a piece that breaks your heart, or is sentimental without being sentimental, that just shows us the heart of the show. And the observation in terms of this cast has chemistry because they really truly love and trust each other immensely. So it's fun. It's a fun show to direct.
Yeah. And that, I would imagine, is just a director's dream, is just to have a cast that trusts each other and loves one another and loves working together. And then in turn, also is welcoming, because as guest directors, we're kind of playing in somebody else's living room. So it's a beautiful place to be.
We are. And sometimes, that sometimes the job is for those who aren't bringing a lot of creativity but delivering what's on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even some of those people can't deliver what's on the page, and sometimes you're spoon feeding, and then sometimes you get to do the job of, it's a sculpture already and you're just molding. And that's what most of the job on this pad is, molding.
Oh.
I know it is. And laughing your ass off, and Pat loves to tease me because she thinks she taught me how to swear, but I think she did give me a filthier mouth than I already have by 100%.
We'll take it.
Guys, if you haven't seen this show, and you
Highly
may,
recommend watching it as well.
yeah. But there's words that you don't hear on television in every scene.
By 100%. Our next question. Because of the Groundhog Day element to the episode, did you have to change the way you created your shot list or planned your day?
Yeah, for the equalizer thing, there was, stunt things and I handled that the same way I would, an episodic big stunt. Actually, the person who doubled her, I had worked with like a month before on Black Lightning. So, but anyone who's done episodic work knows you can't cheat the time. It
Right.
has to be well rehearsed. It has to be safe. And there were, and shot in pieces. So
Right.
we do almost every scene in front of an audience. I think that one was a playback. So it was, just like shooting it as an episodic, because there was no way I was going to get all the elements I needed. I don't think the audience ever saw that live. Yeah, you treat each one individually. And, I think a lot of the cast, hung around to watch the others, but it was that kind of energy. One of the first directors I ever worked with, a wonderful Broadway director named Garland Wright. He started the Lion Theater Company in New York City. And I was a young kid when I first worked with him. He said, when you exit the stage, your job is to turn around and throw the energy back onto it. And that has stuck with me in terms of, that kind of ensemble feeling.
Yeah.
And this cast on a regular basis throws the energy back in when they leave the room.
When you exit the stage, your job is to turn around and
Throw
give
the energy back onto the stage.
throw the
So,
energy back on.
so,
That's
so
beautiful.
don't suck it off.
Don't siphon it away from your fellow cast. I love that.
Yeah. And it's, it's a little metaphysical, but I don't know. I've always believed it.
It's beautiful. Creates good energy. From member Tracy Wren, what is the difference in doing a floor plan and shot list for comedy versus drama? And how closely do you work with the DP on each?
I hardly work with a DP at all on a sitcom. The person I work with more is my camera coordinator, but before I start a sitcom, I always have a way of I've dry blocked it. I've basically staged every scene on a floor plan, knowing one way it will work. And then when I get 2, 3, sometimes, as many days as a particular sitcom has to rehearse, I will throw out, keep, whatever works or doesn't, and improve on that. When I'm and then when I plan that, I have the camera shots in mind because they're pretty standard, close-ups on the outside, a 2-shot the master. It's, between the 2 middle cameras. It's sort of, it's a no-brainer. What I do have to be very cognizant of and I do this with, and I usually give this, or occasionally will do it with the camera coordinator, is I think of what pass do I want the audience to see first? Because sometimes I will, on Miss Pat show, we pre-shoot the entire show, and then we do every scene that we can in front of the audience. But that first pass is, I want to make sure I can tell the entire story with only those 4 cameras, as opposed to pre-shoot day when I'm doing a first pass, a second pass, occasionally a third pass to get all the coverage I need, especially with a scene that has a lot of characters in it. On an episodic show, again, I'm working from my floor plans, and I'm basically blocking a way that I think it will work. And I would say Bethany says 99% of the time, or 90% of the time for her, mostly she does exactly what she plans to shoot. I would say there is a good percentage of I shoot exactly what I had planned. Like yesterday, for those of you who know Directors Tell the Story, we talk about shooting the triangle. And I said to the DP, who's I've worked with before, I'm going to shoot the triangle. He goes, yeah, I know how you do that. And we did exactly what we planned, and it went fast, and it was the perfect coverage for this particular scene, which is very, very efficient. If I'm prepping with a DP on an episodic, we usually know every piece of equipment we're going to use and have a plan. And it's unless an actor comes in and needs some tweaking, which happened this week to me, where Paula Patton, who's a star of Sacrifice, said she was having a meeting with two of her employees and a relative. The way I had pictured it had to do with people coming from the two employees coming from their office and showing up at the door of her office, which makes logical sense. You know, when someone makes an entrance, it's always in my master. But she said, I want them here. So we restaged the whole thing. In fact, we were to the point of marking the scene. And she said, wait a second, I have an idea. And we took the time. I literally sent the entire crew away for another 5 minutes, restaged it so that she felt comfortable with this idea. And it was a good idea. And that's what we did. So sometimes things change in the moment, especially. She and I have a very, very symbiotic relationship in terms of story. We get, she sometimes calls me at night and goes, I have an idea for this. We had an extensive story meeting before we started, because she's also one of the exec producers on the show. So, input from people who are good storytellers.
Yeah.
Which I also think is my responsibility. But listen, best idea wins.
Yeah.
That's
and
a
it's
no.
also really affirming for her, to yes, she's the exec producer and she's the lead on the show and all this other, but just being able to have the ability to say, hey, and you, rather than just being like, nope, we're going to do it my way. It's just,
No. I would say that almost never happens. The only time I will muscle, and hopefully I'll muscle without an actor ever knowing it, is if I have been told by the exec producer what the story is, and we have agreed on that, in terms of the tone meeting. And then if someone's coming in trying to tell a different story, that's when I have to make sure they get on board with the story we've all agreed to tell. Yeah. And that's the time but actors always make me look good. And the secret is to watch.
Yeah.
It is to watch, because sometimes they don't follow their instincts 100% through. And all you have to do is go, I saw you do this. And they know they did it.
Right.
Actors who are in touch with their instrument. And then all I've done is facilitate.
Right.
That great instinct, which was better than mine.
Yeah. And I'm sure you could teach a whole class on how to muscle without the actor knowing to get them on board. I'm sure that's
that's a lifetime of work.
I know.
And following Tommy Shlamy, when we were the 40 directors who got together to create the first time directors class, the original syllabus and what we thought should go into this for the mandatory class that every first time director of episodics now has to take through the DGA. The suggestion that came from Tommy Shlamy, some of us said, Sidney Lumet's book, this book, Directors Tell the Story. Tommy Shlamy threw out this title of this book I only could find at the library, which was a psychology book. And I got it out of the library and I read it, and I said, oh, Tommy, I know why you put that book on this list, because it had to do with being perceptive to people's needs and wants and fear. And I can't remember the name of the book. If I remember it, I'll share it with you guys, but
yes, please.
Yeah. I think it's on the list. Anybody who took the first time director's class, look through the reading list and see if there's a psychology book.
What advice do you have for directors who are applying to these programs?
Apply again, and apply, because I would say almost all the ones I'm familiar with, I mean, I don't do the deciding, but I have a little insight into what the people are looking for. They're looking for people who impress them the first time. And sometimes you have no idea how close so many people get.
Mhm.
And then what you've done between the first time you applied and the second time applied makes a huge, huge impression. Even if it's just 2 more shorts in festivals,
Mhm.
or or an expanding of the genres you've explored. Not that you should do every genre,
Mhm.
but it might be. I'll tell a story. So there's a director who I know through the Directors Guild. I first met her when she was an executive at a studio, who's a wonderful director. I'm not going to say who it is, but I saw her first short and she spent a shitload of money on it. And it's a really, 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 really good sci-fi piece, which is a genre she would most probably like to work in. But I went, if I was going to fill out another thing, I want people to know how good she is with actors, because she is. And I found a little piece written by a former student of mine at USC. And I said, I want you to direct this. And my company just produced it. And I think in terms of the breadth of all the things she's doing, she's a wonderful director. But I thought, this is a real, just simple, wonderful, character-driven little romance, and it would add to the full package when people go, because I know, God, I know, oh, she can only direct this. Oh, she can only direct that. And we
Mhm.
all are victims of that narrow-mindedness. I literally just had an interview for a big episodic that has both humor and drama. And now that I've been nominated for this comedy Emmy, there was a comment in the meeting where I knew exactly what they were thinking. Like they said, well, this isn't a sitcom moment. And I want to say, look at my action reel. I totally get what your show is. I would know how to differentiate between the drama part of it and the comedy part of it.
Yeah.
But both you need for this. People want to go, oh, you can only do this.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Very.
always expand what you're doing, and continue that relationship, especially if you get to a point where they interview, or just keep in touch. Find out who runs a program and keep in touch and say, hey, you know, without an ask, saying, just wanted you to know, I'm still so excited about your program. Um, I loved, I noticed the wonderful credits of the people who you chose for this last, version of it. I wanted you to know that the next short I've done just got into South by Southwest, or whatever that thing is, so that they know, because they also want to see tenacity. They want to see tenacity, growth, and expanding, what Todd Holland calls joy, craft, network, repeat. They want you to keep your joy. They want you to expand your craft. They want you to increase the number of people in your network. And then when you think you've done that to the best of your ability, go back and repeat all of it.
Wow. Those are great words. I'm glad that this is being recorded so we can go back and revisit.
There's a
Uh,
beautiful graphic for that, because Todd Holland, that's his sort of mantra for the directors he mentors, or for success as directing. And he allowed us to, I think he made a little visual to go with it, and it's for free, and you can download it on Directors Tell the Story at Focal Press. Go to Focal Press, then Directors Tell the Story companion website. The companion website has that, and also has a bunch of PDFs you can do with, like, 10 things to think about before you block a scene, 10 things to say to your DP, 10 things to say to an editor, whatever. There's some really helpful, just craft stuff in there.
Mary Lou, thank you so much for this amazing conversation and taking us behind the scenes of your Emmy nominated episode.
Thank you.
Um,
And guys, thank you all for being here with me. I'm truly honored, and so many of you I know well, and I want to support you guys as much as I can. So thank you. And you guys all know my motto, give to get. And so many of you out there are givers as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for those of you who have not seen the show, you can watch the Ms. Pat Show on BET Plus, and make sure to tune into the Emmys on September 12th on ABC. And to learn more about Alliance of Women Directors and support our members, you can visit us online at allianceofwomendirectors.org. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at AWD_directors.